you could never say I love you enough to your spouse. And even though it sounds like this little, cliche, like I love you, say it all the time. Like there's never a time where my husband will say I love you and I'm like, ugh, shut up. It's like, great, yeah, thanks, I'm glad today, just like the next day.
Welcome back to Gen Z Unplugged. We have another amazing interview from our 2025 College Women's Summit with Reagan Conrad, the host of the comments section with the Daily Wire. Reagan has some amazing insight for you about living fiercely with faith and her new show that she's launching with the Daily Wire. So please enjoy this interview with Reagan.
Reagan, thank you so much for coming on Gen Z Unplugged today. I didn't get to hear your speech, which I'm really looking forward to looking back and hearing, because I know you did an incredible job.
Thank you.
At YAF.
Yeah.
And the students loved it. And I was asking some of the students, the girls here today and yesterday, I'm like, who are you most excited to hear from? And every single girl I talked to, they're like, Reagan Conrad. I cannot wait to hear her.
That's
so thank you for coming on the show today.
It's fun to finally get to talk with people, because again, I don't get to do this very often. And so I think that's exciting for me to be able to speak to them. So yeah,
leave the headphones.
Right, take the headphones off, get behind out of the desk, and be in person.
Yes.
So I love this.
Well, that's awesome.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got to where you are today, working with the Daily Wire and things like that, where you kind of started from and where you're kind of looking to go?
Amazing. Yes. Okay. So I guess we'll go back to high school. I learned that I wanted to be a reporter. I traveled a lot and did a lot of like overseas missions. And so I saw often like, man, these stories are not being represented. There's so much that's not being told. And yet I turn on the media and I'm just listening to completely different noise and things that I didn't find are really adding value. And so I wanted to go into reporting and into journalism to then be able to be the voice to the voiceless, as a lot of people I know love to kind of really, how can I find ways to amplify voices that are not often amplified? And so that's what I wanted to do. So I got into journalism that way, studied broadcast journalism and loved it. But I interned at a lot of local news outlets. So that was kind of my thing, to learn the news industry and that side of things. And though I would recommend internships 100%, I mean, I that's where I learned the majority of the skills that now I use today. But they were just not happy in local news. And there was a sense of like, you get burned out really quick, you're miserable. And I was surprised by that. But it kind of put my flags up a little bit, like, do I really want to go into this career? And then COVID hit. So as soon as I graduated, COVID hit. And I went and did some online social media marketing as like my interim job. So it was remote, it was easy, kind of got me through like the beginning of COVID and all of that. And then I got more and more into camera work. So I was doing wedding videography on the side just to learn like videography, to learn storytelling, because I think that's a huge part of being a journalist, is you have to understand then, just because you do the interview, how do you tell the story then to the people that are watching? So I really learned storytelling from that and loved it. I like became obsessed with video editing and all of that. And then I did like a YouTube channel for a bit, had nothing to do with any of these very important topics. And it was just like thrifting. I just like, this is fun YouTube, because I loved YouTube. I've been a YouTube nerd since I was little. I used to do like webcam shows. Like I called them like Reagan and my friend Kelsey's web show, and we would go on Facebook like weekly and post these very cringe, horrible, like, today in social studies this happened. It was like the most horrific. Luckily most of them have been deleted, but I loved that, and I would drag all my friends into videography like from the very beginning of time. So by the time I got to that point in my career, I was doing the marketing, wasn't loving the marketing, but still loved the video element. And then kind of on a whim, I was like, I'm scared to go back into local news, because it didn't, like, the vibes weren't very strong there. Like there was an energy shift that I didn't think I would thrive in. And then I saw the Daily Wire was hiring. I was like, maybe I'll try it. I applied for like some job that I didn't even really understand what it was. And I was like, I don't know, like maybe we could just get in the door this way and then work toward, a path that I actually wanted to be on. Once I got hired, the job that I was hired to do was gone by the time I got there. Like the thing they were gonna do, it wasn't even happening. And I was like, am I still here? And luckily I was still able to stay, but I moved to like the Facebook teams. I was just posting like everything we posted on Facebook. We used to post on Facebook like hundreds of times a day, and it would just be me like posting. So I did that for a long time. Then got increasingly involved with comment section, to the point that I was essentially like associate producing. Like I would just be sending story ideas, posting all of the content for socials, going on all the trips and like filming reels and all the kind of thing, just to like amplify our show as much as possible. So did that for about 2 years, and then became a producer at some point in that window. So kind of went from like content creation to AP work to producer work. And then by the end of that, I was the lead producer of the show. And then as of, I guess, December of this year is when I switched gears. And then in January, I started as the host of the show. So quite the like evolution at the company, but it was so much fun, because it's just kind of like, what they're really good at doing is putting you where you like want to be. So if you're very vocal about like, hey, I'd really love to be on camera. So I said that like in probably month 2 of being there, like, hey, if you guys do this, I used to be a reporter, like I kind of know this side of things. And so they let me do like on camera. We did like Facebook videos back in the day. So it would just be me talking to camera, like reading some random script that would just go on Facebook. And then we had a Snapchat show that I was also the reporter of. So I got to slowly do that more and more. I was like, this is it. This is what I love to do. So it was just a dream the whole way through. And now getting to host, it's incredible. We're working on a new show right now. And so that's what I'm so excited about because all of that I just kind of described of the things that I love to do is now getting to really come out in this new show. So that's coming
that's awesome.
Soonish. I wish I had a date and like more details. I have to be sort of vague, like it's coming soon. But yeah, so it's like my baby, my passion project, and that's going to be on the horizon very soon. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Very happy for you.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see this.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. Well, something that so for the audience, because there's maybe going to be people watching this that have never even heard of the comment section. Especially the older folk, and I feel that sometimes I was like born in the wrong era.
I literally said that in my speech. I was like, I used to feel that all the time, and I still do to a certain degree. But yeah,
because you're getting into like culture, I guess pop, more of the what's happening with like Taylor Swift or like the.
Like modern.
Pop culture.
Stuff.
People that I don't know, like the Bad Bunny guy, I don't even know who this person is.
Like who he is essentially, but yes.
Yeah. So I always bring people like you on my show to comment on this because I'm very illiterate to pop culture. But it is important to understand.
Unfortunately, yes.
It is like important to kind of understand. Yeah. It kind of gives you really a grip on what's actually happening in the political realm because there's a lot of things that intertwine there. So for the audience, if you could kind of give a little background to what you're doing on a daily basis, the audience that you guys are trying to reach and what has been successful there so far. Yeah.
So our demographics are split between men and women pretty down the middle. And our age group is most predominantly in like the 18 to 34-year-old range. So that's like on YouTube specifically is where our show is the most prevalent. But it's also on Daily Wire and Rumble and all the other kind of like platforms that you can view shows. But yeah, I think the main thing with the show is we try to keep a pulse on exactly what's happening, obviously on the internet. So it's like internet culture. It always ties back to the internet because it always ties back to comments. So we find a way to talk about a story that is trending and then seeing what the commentary from just people are and then having a conversation about like from that and pulling out from that what the trends that people are saying, what they're not saying, if they're fighting over something like, okay, this is the discussion happening online and try to highlight that and then kind of have some takeaways. For me personally though, because I like pop culture, but I also have your tendencies of being like, okay, but like, is this important? Is it not? I try to find the stories that I think have a tie into a more important moral conversation. Yes. Because I think if I'm just talking about Taylor Swift and like, oh, her dress was so cute, like that doesn't, it's not helping culture. You know, like enough people are talking about that. And as a conservative, I want to be able to instill my conservative values, but more importantly, my Christian values into what I'm talking about. So I try to find ways to do that in every episode or as many as possible that we can really have those. But typically at the end of each episode, it's kind of a broader takeaway of, okay, if you don't care about Taylor Swift, why can you still care about this message? What can you take away to then, share with your Gen Z audience if you're not Gen Z or just talk with your friends about? So that's what we try to do in the show.
That's amazing. And I'd love to kind of talk about social media a little bit because social media can be seen as such a dangerous black hole that 100%. A lot of people do not want to take part in. Yeah. But there's also a good side of social media that I think you do really well in, like through your Instagram page and what you do at the comment section. Can you kind of talk about experiences like maybe that you've had where people don't agree with certain things that you say on social media, but you still are very courageous in what you do believe to get that message out? Yeah. And I think we see a huge surge after, the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk. Yeah. We see this huge, like I said, surge of young people who want to get involved in social media and stand up for truth and have the courage to speak out of what they believe. And I think that's the beautiful thing of social media. But can you talk about how you kind of deal with any negativity or how you kind of deal with the dark side of social media as everyone probably will experience in their life if they do have a social media account?
Especially if they're conservative or Christian and you speak out about that, you're going to get backlash. Unfortunately, that's the name of the game. What I would say, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but something that I think is really important is, again, knowing the truth, locking in on what is truth, and knowing that whether it's biblically speaking, conservative values that you want to learn more about, reading the books of the founders and like genuinely understanding what you're talking about. I'm deep into that right now because, again, Charlie did that so well. And so when I had a question about anything, I could go to Charlie's page and just look and see what he said, and now I feel like obviously we have this new burden where now we have to go do the research ourselves. We have to go learn the truth for ourselves, and we can't just refer back to someone else's voice or their videos, though he will always be a huge guiding light in that. So again, first of all, learn the truth, know the truth, and get really locked in on that, factually speaking. But also from a personal level, the biggest thing to counteract the negativity that you're going to receive on the internet is to know where your identity is found in. So if your identity is found in Christ and you believe that and you know that and you stew on that, you make sure that you truly believe that, then when the comments come in that are saying things about your identity that are not true, they roll off. They don't sting, they don't have the power, because we're not supposed to be like slaves to the internet trolls, you know? And especially as conservatives, as Christians, we're supposed to be courageous. We're supposed to be bold. We know the world's not gonna like us. I mean, we're like, that's one of the first things that Jesus is like, hey, just so you know, they hate me, they're gonna hate you too if you're doing it well. You know what I mean? If you're being bold and you're talking about truth. So it's easy to read that verse. I'm like, okay. But then when you feel it, you're like, oh shoot, okay, that's what he means. Okay, we really have to keep going anyways. So I used to have such thin skin, horribly so. It was like a joke my dad always said, like I couldn't take a single thing someone said, and I'm like, I'm weeping, like I'm so sorry. But I had to develop thick skin, and so I cling to that identity in Christ. And then again, I don't let those words hold the power that they used to hold on me, because you can't get anywhere in this movement if you let one thing just send you into a spiral. Though you can do that. So my third piece of advice would be, often don't read comments. I mean, I know that sounds like Joe Rogan, and I like to say this because I mean, not that I'm any Joe Rogan, but Joe's always like, yeah, don't read the comments. And a lot of people who are just speaking for a living, they're not actually reading them very often. They're talking to people, which is good, but to just spend hours in the comments, it's not, you're going to see the one thing and that's going to be the thing that you focus on. And so I would recommend like, don't stick in that area, keep going forward and don't like be looking back, because that's just going to hold you back.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because a lot of young people that I know that go viral or they make videos, and even myself, like I have I just don't care. I'm like, whatever. Okay, like you're some like random person.
That's what you need for this industry. I need
like,
to develop that.
You're just some random, and that's the thing too, is like these are people who are hiding behind a screen. Half of these people wouldn't say that to your face. They're cowards. 100%. They're flat out cowards. And what actually concerns me the most is that you have conservatives predominantly doing this to other conservatives, and they're saying some of the most like vile comments, the most character assassinating things that you could possibly say to someone. And then you're like, would you say that to them in front of their face? Because I've never seen you say that. Like, why wouldn't you? Because you're a coward. And then you have kids that are looking at that and seeing how you're calling people racist every 5 seconds. As a conservative, like I'm specifically speaking to those that claim to be Christian conservatives. And then kids see that, they're like, oh, well, then I can say that. And then they go to their schools, and all I hear, literally from middle school, high school students, is you're racist, you're a misogynist. It's all of this name-calling, like character assassinating people. And it's very harmful. And parents, adults have to do better on social media, because they are leading the way in that. And it's like, I guess they're not millennials. Maybe they're most millennials.
A combo of some Gen Z was crazy, and then also millennials. But I
don't know what the generation above that is. It's like my dad's generation.
Gen X?
Yeah, maybe that's it.
X? Yeah, I think.
Like the 40, 50 range. They're also really brutal also. It's very interesting. But I want to go to Proverbs 31, because you were talking about conservative women and how we are called to live above reproach. And it is hard to find young women in the conservative movement like yourself who aren't just a face on the media, then there's someone different behind closed doors. Like I've been able to see you kind of live it out. You're married, your husband's awesome, had some great conversations with him. You guys have a strong marriage. You're living out your faith on a daily basis. What does it mean? Like if you could really share with a young woman what it means to be a Proverbs 31 woman, a woman living her life above reproach, what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the Proverbs 31 whole chapter, there's so much there. Like she does so much, and she does all of it so well. And so you just read like, how do I even begin to emulate that? Because it's such a phenomenal mirror of what I think good, godly womanhood looks like. And so it's such a high standard too, which I think is really hard, because how do all of us live up to that? It's nearly impossible, but at least there's a standard to then try. And so that's what I really like to do of constantly, it's like a constant refinement of my own life of like, okay, what can I do differently to be more and more like her and like that kind of woman that I know God calls me to be? Because am I perfect? Am I there yet? Absolutely, like not even close. But the idea of wanting to be more like that. So even recently, like, you know, I'm changing shows that I watch. I'm reading different scripture that I've never really dove into before. Just different things that my husband and I talk about a lot of like, okay, what can we do differently like this week to change the culture in our home and to change what we consume and what we do? Because it will be a journey for life. But really kind of marinating, for lack of a better word, on who that woman is and what she does. And then what are ways that I can, I mean, even I was reading Proverbs 31 again in preparation for the speech, and it said, you know, like, she treats her servants very well, and she opens her arms to the poor. I'm like, what am I doing right now what could I be doing more? Like, is there a local pregnancy clinic that I emailed 2 years ago and never really did anything with? Yes. So I want to email them again, like actually get involved. Like certain things that I don't want to allow my laziness or my busyness to pull me away from other things that I should be doing to live more like that. So I think there's constantly ways that we can find in our own lives. How do we be better? And try to live to that standard. And so that's what I'm continually trying to do. But it's hard in this culture, especially. But it's so important that, again, we strive for something.
You know, I'm really glad that you brought up just like volunteering at pregnancy centers, because I feel that a lot of people will kind of work their way up in the political movement or just in any ladder, right? And they think that they've reached this like peak moment where they don't have to do any grassroots work. They'd really, that's it. Like they are a very important person. And that's something I really admire about Charlie Kirk. And now that I'm seeing this in you and so many leaders that we've already interviewed today, that they have humility. Which really, to be a godly woman or godly man, like you have to have humility and to humble yourself, realizing like he who stands before any man, like we can stand before any man if we kneel before God. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, because a lot of times we get so worked up in our pride and our own ego and I'm this good, like I got on this podcast, like I've reached it, I don't have to volunteer at pregnancy centers. And I've noticed even people say that to others, like, why are you wasting your time, like why are you door knocking, why are you showing up to pregnancy centers?
It's the first step of the fall, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, pride comes before the fall, but knowing that. And then I think too, even with the Proverbs 31 woman, there's a standard there. So if you can look to my life and say, well, you're saying this, Reagan, you're talking about you're not living that out at all. What does that mean for my testimony and then for me to direct people back to Christ? So if I'm not even attempting to live like that, yet I'm speaking about Christ, that doesn't work. That's not gonna help amplify the gospel. And so I think especially when you get a spotlight on you, that's where you need to be like, that's where I'm being like, oh my gosh, how much more can I do? Because there's so much I need to be doing and ways to bettering myself to be like her. And so I think that becomes more important the more vocal and outspoken and, you know, more cameras are on you. It's like, do more. Be who God called you to be. So it's a high standard. It's like a lot of pressure, but again, it's good because even like, you know, pregnancy centers, like if we're going to talk about being pro-life, what can we physically do day to day rather than just posting the social media posts, which is important and we should do that. But what else can we do to physically help the women that we know are suffering or who need help? Or even I think it also helps with conservatives to then have compassion for the understanding what women are struggling with. And because again, relating to people on a human level then helps to convey a message. So for the pro-life cause, if we know someone has an unplanned pregnancy and she's struggling, getting to meet people face to face it's 10 times more effective than just posting them in the internet and not doing anything about it. All those things are good, but again, the more that you can do for the movement, I think the better. So
yeah, that's amazing. And you're so like inspiring and being so outspoken with your faith. And I think that's something a lot of people shy away from is because they don't want to be canceled for being outspoken in the faith and believing in God. So was there a moment in your life or in your career where you had to really choose this is not going to be popular, but I need to do this for myself? And was there a moment in your own personal faith journey where you saw that in yourself and you said, no, this is my time to step up and to speak out and to speak my truth in God? Yeah.
I mean, there were moments, especially in childhood, which is bizarre that like politics were a conversation. I mean, I grew up in a family that was GOP. We had like a GOP license plate. Like it was, so that was just part of like my upbringing. And so was Christianity specifically. So that was never like do I talk about it? That was always just kind of a natural part because I saw my father who had a career in the secular world as an attorney and as a judge, but he was still open about his faith always. And so I saw that, I'm like, oh, he can do that. Like I should be doing that too. And it's important because again, even for the people he was working with prisoners and criminals and speaking life and the gospel into them, and then the radical effects that I saw that happen. So in regards to whether or not I was going to share my faith, that was never so much of a question because again, I saw the fruit of that and why it's so important to do that. But I think in my own journey in elementary school, there's one time I brought my Bible to school because girls were like debating a certain subject. And I was like, no, but the Bible says this. And I brought in like a Bible as a 5th grader and all the girls were like, what? I mean, I looked like such a loser, but I was like, but it says right here, like I know the verse.
It's highlighted.
Yeah, it's like highlighted. And I think that was the moment that, again, that was very 5th or 6th grade, but very early on, I was like, oh, okay, just because it even says it in the Bible, it doesn't actually like, it doesn't matter to everyone. And I had to learn that like as a naive child to be like, okay, I need to, just because it says something, I need to now learn how to formulate arguments and actually like dive into that further than to actually get people to come to agreement and to understand my point of view. So I think it's always been such an important pivotal part of communicating at large and just understanding truth. It comes from that source. And so I think it ties in so deeply to the conservative movement. And it's tricky because not all conservatives like believe that, obviously, and that's okay. But for me, that is just how I come to my viewpoints on politics. So yeah.
Is there a way, and to like the audience or listeners, like young Gen Z women out there, how can they more dive deep into their Bible? Like, what is your advice to them where if they are a conservative, but they want to know more and dive deeper into traditional truth, what would your advice be to them to kind of get their words and their truth from the Bible?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, first of all, if you don't have a Bible, go buy one. Open it up. I mean, I sat on ones for years and like barely ever touched them, right? And I think that you have to be reading it. Yeah. I think starting with the Gospels is huge. So John, I feel like a lot of people say John is a good starting place. I would probably agree to really understand the character of Jesus, because obviously that then dictates all the Old Testament and the New Testament. So really understanding that is very important. And I mean, I even just went to like a Christian bookstore like a couple days ago because like, you know what, there's this one by my house. I never realized, like I went in. It was so fun. Like there's all these different Bibles and different like study tools. And so I was just nerding out, like buying these highlighters that don't go through the pages. I don't know if you guys seen those.
I haven't.
Mind blowing. Like you can highlight verses and then they don't. Anyway, so things like that, right, I'm too like focused of doing stuff on my phone and being like having the Bible off my phone, which is a good thing, but having a physical Bible, having actual tools. There are Bibles that are study Bibles, specifically even for women, so female Bible studies. Those I would recommend. I mean, there's a bunch of them and I can't name a certain brand offhand that I would recommend one over the other, but to find those because they give little like, they talk you through essentially every page of the Bible, which I think is super important because some of it kind of can go over your head. Different versions of the Bible are easier to read than others, that kind of thing. But yeah, just getting it in the Word, and also the Holy Spirit works through that. So as you're reading it, like He will help you understand and discern what you're reading. And because I know it can be nuanced and complicated and huge, but again, we can all understand it. So I just recommend like pick up the Bible, read it, and then you'll start to understand the truths that are highlighted in it.
Okay, this is so random, but I know that some of the girls are going to want to know this. What does a day-to-day life look like working for the Daily Wire?
Yeah. Okay. So I come in at like 8 a.m. I should be coming in earlier than that, but I sleep in and I'm really bad with my times in the morning. We have hair and makeup starts right away. Typically then I'm still working on the story for the day or kind of finishing out certain work things on my laptop. And then we roll the show at around 9:30, 10. We record the show for about an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes less, kind of depends on what we're doing. And then that ends that part of the day. I then start kind of researching like what's happening the next day, like what are the trends happening online, because very quickly it's like, okay, then what's next? It's changed a little bit because I'm also working on other projects now, so I'm not solely focused on the script writing for the next day, but I'm doing that in addition to working on scripts and other things for the other projects that I'm working on. Some of those are interviews and like talking to people on Zoom or in person. But yeah, always in the background, it's like, hey, but what's trending on the internet right now that we're going to be talking about, and how do we tie that into larger stories? So that happens sort of all afternoon. I meet with my producers a lot throughout the day, and then I'm also producing a lot of things in a sense because I'm always going to have that like producer beat on the show, and just, I mean, that it's been my baby for years in terms of like the producer back end. So I'm always going to be a nerd with that, and it's really fun. And so then we watch like the V1s, which are the first version of the show for the day. Give notes, all that kind of stuff, and then we create the thumbnails and the titles, and then the day typically comes to an end. I go home, and then I write the show from home often because I'm busy at work, so I don't end up like writing the show when I should. So then I write it at night while my husband's sitting there just being like, get off your computer, and then going to bed. So that's like, yeah. Sometimes I make it to the gym, sometimes I make it to like different little events that I'm trying to get to throughout the day, but
that's awesome. Yeah. What is good advice for someone? I'm engaged, so I'm about to get married.
Congrats.
So thank you. Like you are married to your husband and you have a great career and like looks like a great marriage. Yeah. How do you balance both of those so well? And what are some key important things that you could give to advice of other people who are looking to get married, who are married, who just want advice to be a better wife, and be the best version of yourself for your husband?
Well, for those who are single, be patient and wait for the right man, because he will come, and that then dictates everything else I'm going to say. Because if I didn't have Adam, if it was not the relationship that we have, this would be very tricky, you know, if it's not the right person, and someone who knows your heart and is your biggest supporter, and all of that is so important, which he is, of course. So he was the one, you know, sitting there watching the whole time. I was like watching him watch the speech the whole time. But yeah, so picking the right person, number one. I think for maintaining like a strong and healthy marriage, obviously Christ first, always. That is the central point of a marriage that I think can really strengthen it and help it. But as for the day-to-day, I think there's a lot of intentionality that is lost, especially with like social media and even being busy with work. I'm guilty of it a lot, where I'm on my phone when I should be talking to him or making eye contact with him when I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? And those kind of little things, I think they really like grow over time. So it's the little acknowledgement of when you first come in the door, you go up to your spouse, you give them a hug and a kiss, you say hello, you say, you know, you interact with them rather than just being like, sup, yeah, anyways. That's such a thing that I'm seeing in culture. And again, I can feel like how easy you could fall into that trap. So little things like that habitual things that you're setting early in your marriage are so helpful. Also something, my sister said this at my wedding, I love saying this to people, but you could never say I love you enough to your spouse. And even though it sounds like this little, you know, cliche, like, I love you, say it all the time. Like, there's never a time where my husband will say, I love you, and I'm like, ugh, shut up. It's like, great, yeah, thanks, I'm glad today, just like the next day. And just keep saying that to people. I think not to people, to your husband, your family, to everyone, yeah. But I think that it's so important. So I would just say, like, it's the little things that grow over time in a marriage, where, again, this is your roommate, this is your life partner. They see all the good and all the bad. So really focusing on how can I be intentional even when I'm busy, because I'm at work super late. I come home and I keep working. So in that respect, I hate that for his sake, but I find other ways to make up for that in the time being. And it's like there's like this kind of ebb and flow of relationships in what you're doing. So right now I'm working a lot, and that might change in the future, and then eventually I'll step into the role of a mother, and I'll be doing different things. And so there'll always be different hats that we put on, but just being encouraging and being supporting, and again, being intentional is what I would recommend.
That's amazing. That's good. Reagan, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. I am excited for all that's coming. I'm excited to watch this new show. I might understand a little bit more.
Stay tuned.
And hopefully we can like talk about it more and like kind of give more details. But
yeah, this will be good. Yeah, it's interesting. Going back to what you said real quick about the demographics in both men and women. Yeah. I always thought that the comment section and what you were doing was predominantly women. Yeah. But I keep coming across all these young guys who are like 18, 19 years old, and I'm like, how do you keep up with what's happening in the world? I love asking that. Yeah, that's good. I'm like, how do you keep up with what's happening in the world? And they'll start listing off all these things, like the comment section. I'm like, you watch the comment section?
It's like wildly.
That's crazy.
Very heavily male. And it used to be more so. Now it's a bit more 50-50, but it's also encouraging to see like men care about it too. And so, but it's tricky as like a female picking topics. Like, what am I going to pick that I want to talk about, but also kind of fits all the demographics that I know are watching, and tying it in again to the bigger things so that both sexes can take away something from it. So
so true.
Totally. All right. Well, Reagan, how can people find you? How can they
find me on Instagram at Reagan Conrad, YouTube at the comment section, and I guess I'm on X now. I'm starting to like try to post on X and be active on other platforms. So X, also Reagan Conrad. So yeah, you can find me there, and fun things coming. So thank you guys for having me. Awesome. This is so much fun.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.